Just a minute, ladies and gentlemen. I think something is happening.
We've been talking about this for a couple of years now, and I'm a little confused on the distance. Like, has it
Yeah.
come and gone in a couple of years, or is it here
No, what
for a couple
happens
of
is
years?
I've always had a real huge distance, because we see this out view and they look really close to each other, and I've always wondered about that as well. But if you look at the compound makeup of what the two solar systems, the compound of the two binary linked systems actually is, they are in a close knit spiral in the center of our solar system, not including our solar system, because we're actually the smaller solar system. So it's us going through them. And we're a widened out, larger, spread out solar system. We've got, two major gas giants, or three major gas giants, and they're spread out in a weird pattern, but they've got two major gas giants plus all their debris and everything. We have an Oort cloud, they have an Oort cloud. Now, we're going through them, and they spiral at a tighter spiral because their star is larger. And then you can take into account gravity and mass and all of this, so their spiral is tighter and a tighter knit, where we're running off a smaller dwarf yellow star, and so our spiral attachment, our magnetic thread that holds us in place and why we spiral behind it in a static cling, is much wider because we have a smaller star. So we are passing through them. So it's really, of course, there's a lot of distance between 93 million miles between Earth and the Sun. That's a lot of space. And there's only two tiny little planets, Venus and Mercury, plus all the little debris and the, Ceres and Makemake and all of the other small asteroid semi-planet, depending. And of course, that also boils down to the view of mankind on what is a planet and what is not a planet. But if you look at the makeup of proton neutron count for the makeup of our binary solar system, it has many, many more bodies than man takes into account. And I've never gotten into a lot of that information because I didn't want to distract from those people who barely get it as well. But distance literally doesn't have anything to do with how you look at it. It should be viewed as under shell structure, placements of the atomic structure. And we're a double star, a star within a star. And there's more details on that, because you have to view it. You can't view it through Einstein, with the dinner plate and little planets circling around our star on a regular basis, because that's not how it works. We're traveling through virgin space at all time, and we play catch up in a spiral behind our stars. So you have to revamp how rotation, orbitation, gravitation, and all of that is re-looked at, because we're not on one plane. We're not on this one little dinner plate. We're at different elevations and depths according to the structure of each of our solar systems, yet attached to each other, following the star, which is and following the gas giant Nibiru. And a lot of people don't get that. The two stars are held together with massive, massive gas giant unlit star Nibiru, which is vast. I mean, it is huge. It is huge. But according to for instance, other stars, everything that we're talking about is very small, like compared to Betelgeuse or any of the other major blue or white stars that exist out there, that are these gas giants beyond your wildest imagination in other parts of our universe.
Speaking of the names, I wanted to ask you, we have the name Wormwood here in the comment about the lead asteroid over Russia. And I was a big fan of C.S. Lewis growing up. I guess I always assumed Wormwood was from the book, the Screwtape Letters, but it might have come from before that. Why are some people calling it Wormwood, and then why do you have different names from what they might be calling it?
Because basically it has about 5 or 6 or 7 different names. But yes, in fact, this is the asteroid, the object cluster group is Wormwood. Wormwood the Destroyer. These are these asteroids that are underneath, they're in groups, and they have specific areas that they travel at all times, because they don't orbit around our solar system like Earth does. They orbit underneath the gas giants in their own orbitational sort of southerly Oort cloud. And now I've noticed that most of our moons in our solar system are in the northern hemisphere. Now, with all of the Nibiru planets, the 8 planets, the 7 that we normally watch, all of their major moons and their lunar activity is in the southern hemisphere, which has led me to believe that we have a polarity opposite, which is why we don't steal planets from them and they don't steal planets from us. Like, we are not going to go along with, because there's a rumor, everybody says, oh, Earth is going to go with Nibiru this time. And it's like, that's not happening, because they're a polarity issue where they stay to their group, we stay to ours, just like the little Scotty dogs and the magnets. And you can bring them close and they spin around and push away.
Okay, I got a question about this then. Go
ahead.
So if that's the case, so polarity is like when you flip the wave, right? I'm not telling you, I'm telling the audience. So your peaks and the valleys of your wave are flipped, and therefore things will repel one another. So is it likely that other groups of planets that are in this same sort of situation have the same polarity, and maybe it is a catastrophic situation?
A lot of that has to do with makeup. Whether or not I believe that objects that have an electrical core are more likely to repel with their personal magnetosphere than not. And I think where we're seeing any planetary object that runs into another planetary object, that would be due to a core value, like Mars is more likely to hit another planet because it has such a lesser core and a lesser electrical value, less of an atmosphere. And I believe that eventually that is what occurred, because at one point in time, the entire top half of Mars's atmosphere was burned off. Now, that could be from an actual plasma exchange where it crashed or something hit at an angle. Angle of impact has a great deal to do with it as well. If you're a slow-moving, close-passing planet, you're more likely to repel than hit, because your electrical body magnetosphere is completely opposite of the other, and the two atmospheres get together and they start pushing each other away.
Yeah, because
it's the same thing that you cannot put your finger through the tabletop. In all actuality, if you were to microscopically view this occurrence between the tabletop and your finger, you would see an electrical storm, because my electric charge and the tabletop have two complete different electrical bases. And they argue when you don't actually touch the table, there's a little microscopic subatomic electrical storm that will not let you put your hand inside the table.
Yeah, that always amazes me at the complexities of existence. The idea that I'm never actually touching anything, but it's one of my main senses.
And that's the unification model that Einstein.
Yeah.
That's the unification model that Einstein could never perceive, because he was always looking for what it works in the subatomic, and then they were trying to figure out why the planets work the way they did out in space. And you cannot separate the existences between what goes on in space and in inner space, in our area and in our living room, because the same rules apply. And this is where, when he brings in gravity, his equations will never work, because we do not live off a gravitational scenario, although it is a byproduct of it. We live off an electrical universe, and water is electric, and air and the gases out there in space are electric, and this is why we see the events and the illumination between the asteroid cluster group and all this other, and why the planets don't hit us, even though they come really close to us on hundreds of occasions already. And this is, of course, going to lead me back into the next topic, which would be the light issues. I can't believe that people aren't seeing the light, because the light is so messed up by how close these planets are passing to us.
Well, I gotta admit to you, hang on, before we go on, I have to admit that I have established some pretty terrible habits, thanks to COVID, of not going outside very often. So you're going to have to explain the light issue to me pretty well.
I agree. And even my kids are not going out as much as they should. Their hair color hasn't gotten blonde yet for this year. The light issues, it even shows up in television. And if you go back to old movies running from 2011 on, and if you start paying attention, the trick is, if you really want to see the planets, start looking at the dark areas in pictures first. When you see a movie, when you see the newscast, look at the sky and look at the dark area first. And then you'll notice there's a clipped-off edge of the sun, because there's a planet actually cutting off a smaller corner edge, or on top of, or in some cases, 3 edges, left, right, and top. Or even, and of course, lately a lot of asteroids have been crossing the sun and intermixing in with the sun. So the captures these people are getting are all intermittently weird, and they've got this, sort of almost X-ray focal thing going on in their normal pictures, and they're wondering why. It's because the asteroids are crossing the sun as well. And this is that same group of asteroids that is below Attu's moon, Uri, etc., that are cutting into our view and so close to Earth that we're actually seeing the. Now remember, we see the dark side of all this stuff between Earth and the sun. And so we're seeing the backside, and the side illuminations are becoming more and more and more prevalent now that the planets are going higher and higher above us and passing Earth. And like I was saying earlier with the west, when the sun is setting in the evening, if you look by the northwest, you'll see up in the sky these illumination occurrences of, now we're talking sky pillars, we're not looking for little stuff. These sky-filling illuminations of these rounded planets, and if you look this evening or in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see this boiling Saturn's yellow moon with these little fire-like clouds around it. In some cases, you might even see an illumination, because that happens a lot. And we've been getting some great captures from that too as well. So it's cutting off the light, and the light, it looks weird. And if you see something looks really weird up there, spend a few minutes looking at it, and by God, you'll notice that off to the west or off to the off to the east, you'll see that it's dark over there and dark over there, and it's like, wow, and you're just illuminated in a sliver that is shining between the passing planets. And people just, they don't get the light issues. It's huge. And of course, Nepenthe is coming in with a rain bomb, and it's affecting, if you look at the Amazon and you look at Australia and you look at the southern hemisphere, they're flooding like crazy because there are side passes still of Nepenthe, and that's going to increase because we're back in the 180-day cycle. So they're all a lot closer than they have been again. And this is the closest they've ever been, and this is so time proven because our pictures match year after year after year after year, except they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's excruciatingly exciting. And for those people who have seen it and can't unsee it, they're completely on board with this. But if you haven't seen them yet, now you need to. I mean, wow, because this is the event of a lifetime, and they're so big on top of us right now that we're going to see some drastic effects this year for sure. Absolutely.
But he's a robot. Without you, what could he do?
There's no limit to what he could do. He could destroy the Earth.
All vehicles close in. Let's go.